We are joined today by Tamsin Grimmer. Hello, Tamsin.
Hi.
Now, this is part of our back to school week. We're thinking about various elements of education in the UK and how people are affected because it's quite good to know this is the 1st to the 5th of September. Therefore, we are in the UK at least back to school. I know it's different around the world, but hopefully this will help you wherever you are to be more informed and to consider what it is that's affecting various elements of education. Now, Tamsin, where is your specialty in education?
So I'm an early years consultant. So I work with the very youngest children, or rather, I work with the adults who work with the very youngest children.
Which is actually an important distinction because um, the pressures that are faced by people who are working with children is different from the children themselves, which is kind of the whole point of this approach in September of what are those pressures. So early years, just give us a broad overview because we're all around the world anyway.
Yeah.
What's the basic age bracket that we're considering here?
So within the UK, which is where I predominantly work, early years covers from birth to kind of the end of the reception years, to the end of age 5 for children. So they tend to have entered school by then. So it covers all of the preschool, the nursery, all of that kind of education, and their first year usually in primary school. There is a bit of a push to kind of move that age group up a little bit, and around the world early years would actually cover kindergarten, which usually ends at sort of age 6 or 7 depending on the country, which a lot of people in the UK would love. A lot of people within early childhood in the UK would love, because we think children's early years definitely goes on a little bit more than age 5.
I mean, that's part of the thing, though. Of course, you've got the cultural differences. I was reading about Italy recently, where it's quite normal culturally for children who are very, very young, 8 and below, to stay up midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, because that's where the family are and that's what they do. So they would just be napping on a settee. So culturally, of course, every country is going to be slightly different in terms of what's acceptable, what's normal. Here in the UK, if you've got a 6-year-old awake at 2 a.m., people might be tutting their lips. But actually, Italy, that's completely normal.
Absolutely, it's different all around the world, and school starting age is different all around the world. And sadly, in England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales, we tend to start our children a little bit young, and that's not necessarily better for the children. But there's lots of historical reasons as to why that is. But I guess that would sidetrack us a little bit right now.
That's fine. So just give another overview. So we've got kind of 0 to 5, 0 to 6 ish is the bracket
Yeah.
of years we're talking about. What's the kind of provision that would be happening in the UK in early years? What is it that actually is happening? Is it just playtime? Is it school time? What's the kind of cross section of what's going on there?
So hopefully it's definitely play, because play is learning. So with our youngest children, they are learning through everything that they're doing, and usually that's in a playful way. So sometimes that might be play that adults have kind of designed an environment so the children can play within it and learn what the adults want them to learn through that environment. And sometimes it might be just letting the children literally let them loose, so to speak. So there are sort of different elements. Sometimes we'll do some direct teaching with them, particularly as the children get a little bit older in that age group. And then it's moving a little bit more traditionally school-like, if you like, but hopefully still very much hands-on and active, because our youngest children need to be moving, they need to be outside, they need to have that very much hands-on manipulative kind of being able to manipulate materials and so on. So it needs to be very hands-on for them.
I think some might argue that children can be quite manipulative in their
I
own
know, yeah,
ways.
sorry about
That's
that.
fine. But I mean, it's not that untrue. I've had little kids. We know they can want what they want, and that's the end of it. I very clearly remember one of my children who, before he could speak, could point and learnt the word no. And when I was writing a shopping list one time, I hadn't put yogurts, and he went to the fridge and said, basic pointing to yogurt. We need more of those, was his
Yeah.
basic point. And I said no. And he went to the fridge, actually grabbed one out, stuck it on the piece of paper with a pen, and he's like pointing. We wrote down the word yogurt, because children can be quite good at actually articulating, even, and he was too young to really speak properly, but he
Yes.
can still articulate his point.
And isn't that wonderful? That's what I love about the early years age group, because everything they do and everything they say once they can sort of speak, but everything they do, all of their behaviour is communication. And it's absolutely fantastic. We just have to tune into that and understand how to interpret it, which is where it can be difficult.
Yes, it can be challenging because every child has their own unique approaches to speaking, and of course, every family is uniquely different as well. So you've got all these different children are turning up at their early years provision for the first time, and the staff then have to think, okay, they know the school, they were here last year, but now they're a bit older, and of
Yeah.
course, the other thing is 1 year to the next, even at that age, at 3 years old. A
Yeah.
6-8 week break is a massive amount of time for a
Huge.
small child.
Absolutely. It's absolutely massive. At this time of year, we obviously there's a lot of transition in the early years age group. So you have some children that might have stayed on in preschool for one more year so that before they move on to school. We've got other children that have started school, and there could be, 1 day's difference between them. So a child literally, last week at the end of August could have been 3 years old. They turn 4 on the 31st of August, and then they're in school a couple of days later in reception class. So if you think about it, really, you're teaching a 3-year-old. But equally, you could have a child who in the first week of term turns 5. So, and you're teaching those children alongside each other. And the difference between a just 4-year-old or a 3+ year old, you could say, and a 5-year-old is immense, because it's a quarter of their life in terms of learning. So when you're only 4 years old, a year is a quarter of your life. So when you look at it in that perspective, our teachers of our youngest children have a massive undertaking, and they do a brilliant job of supporting our young children, because it's a very different way of teaching. So
If you're 40, then that's basically 10 years of your life spent doing something. In 10 years, you can learn quite a lot. I remember
yeah,
very clearly with my youngest dad, he went to school and he was right at the bottom end of that year group, because obviously your year for beginning school is determined by your birthday, as you were just saying. And the teacher said, we've never seen this before, but everybody else in his class was almost in the next year up. So you talk about nearly a year's gap. And so for my little lad, who was very young relatively, he couldn't quite hold a pen yet because he hadn't his fingers were still developing. And that's the kind of thing that's the breadth of difference we're talking about.
it's absolutely massive. Yeah.
So when people are coming back to work, obviously the children are turning up 8 o'clock, whatever it is, on Monday morning. What is it that the staff and the team at the early years provision, what is it that they go through the 6 weeks? How are they progressing through that in preparation?
So a lot goes into preparing for the children. If you've got a new cohort, obviously starting, it's quite different from just a cohort moving up a year, because obviously these are children that you may have only met once or twice, and they might not have been in a school environment before, for example. So you're doing an ever such a lot of kind of preparing the grounds for them. So we tend to have a lot of things that would support the child with their independence. So we tend to get little photos. We're doing a lot of laminating at this time of year, putting little photos on their pegs or pictures for the children so that they can independently find their coat peg or where to put their book bag, and so on and so forth. We're doing a lot of labelling of things. Children at this age that we're working with don't tend to be writing in lots of books yet, because obviously those are skills that they're going to develop over time. So we're doing a lot more of teaching them about the environment and what they can and can't, where they can and can't go, what they can and can't do, things like that. But obviously it's all about the welcome. So it's getting that as much as possible, that loving, welcoming environment, so the children feel a little bit home from home, because it's going to be very difficult for them. For some children, it might be the first time they've had to leave their parents for any length of time. Other children may be very used to going in daycare or something, but they may have had several weeks off, and as you've pointed out, that can be a massive difference. And we tend to notice that that until a child has fully settled in, which can take up to a couple of months really, till they've built those relationships with the adults, we don't really see the true kind of child. So they really need to kind of settle in and feel at home until we get to know them properly. So it also means some of their skills will regress. So we may even have things like little accidents. We might have to have some spare pants and around, and various things like that. So it's quite a different sort of teaching environment with the youngest children, really. It's incredibly rewarding, and what we're doing at this time is just really preparing that ground, which will kind of make the whole year hopefully go very smoothly, helping them to make friends with each other, learn each other's names. Obviously we've got the usual, we've got to learn their names, but you tend to get some faster than others, don't you? Yep. So there's a lot going on, but it's often very environmental within early childhood. A lot of getting things organised and sorted and set up, if you like.
So where can faith enter into this? Because when we're thinking about schools, perhaps more uniquely, I guess, in the UK, you can have a church school. So you can have a Church of England Anglican primary school or secondary school, which is what I went to. Now I know that's not necessarily all over the world, but early years, I've never heard of a Church of England early years. So where can faith very naturally enter into early years provision?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, there are some Christian early years settings. So another of our trustees runs a lovely Christian nursery in Nottingham called Heart Nursery School. And there are various Christian sort of preschools and nursery groups around the country. And of course, toddler groups, sometimes associated with churches and so on. But there are a lot of, I would say, a Christian ethos often underpins a lot of early years provision anyway. So outside of sort of this, I actually research love, and I look at something called a loving pedagogy. And when I'm teaching about a loving pedagogy, I look at the beautiful, love is patient, love is kind. I look at that Corinthians passage, and I talk about how actually, as a professional working with young children, that's what our professional love looks like with the children. We need to be patient, we need to be kind, we need to keep no record of wrongs, all of these things. So I think a great early years teacher does all of that. And so some of our early years teachers will be working in schools that maybe have a Christian ethos, others may not be, but I still think we can very much be sort of influenced by that whole pedagogy that underpins what we're doing, which can be placed on that I nearly said placed on that firm foundation. Then I realised I'm actually naturally linking into a plug because an organisation that I'm a trustee for, Love Early Years, actually wrote a book called Firm Foundations. And it's rooting a child's early years in love and faith. And actually, it's all about children's spirituality. But it talks about just that, really. So it's about how we can bring the spiritual into the early years.
You want to hold the book up a bit higher and we'll have a proper look at it. No, it's fine. There you go. Yeah, that's fine.
Foundations. Oh.
Joys of webcams. That's fine. How can you, I mean, this is how, it's a brilliant example. The fruit of the spirit, got all these wonderful elements, gentleness and kindness and patience. And yeah, we need that. Absolutely. How do you apply that to the children? Well, you've answered that one. How do you then apply your faith to your colleagues?
So I think a lot of it will be through them observing what you're doing with the children. I think, we're role modeling to the children all the time, but actually you're also role modeling to your team around you and your colleagues and friends. And I think, if we are living out our faith, then hopefully people will see that in our lives, and they'll see Jesus through what we're doing, how we're approaching things. For example, there might be a child whose behaviour is quite challenging. Maybe they're very dysregulated. They might be throwing, biting, hitting, particularly in the younger year groups. This isn't uncommon. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's any particular issues, but the child could be, struggling to settle in. How we respond to that child will either be demonstrating, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, etc., or not. So I think some of it's about us and how we're, how we're conducting ourselves, I suppose.
It's such a simple thing, and yet it seems such a big thing, but it's really not. Is how people are looking and watching us and saying, well, that child's just, spat on your shoe. What are you going to do? And we have okay, there's going to be an initial reaction, which is probably to move your foot away. But then what do we do next? And that's where faith actually can be very much on display of how do we respond after the initial, ooh, that's not very nice. Then what do we do?
And sometimes it's being, brave enough to say, do you know what? I'm really sorry. I didn't deal with that very well. I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have said that, or, I can do better, or can I learn from you? Can you help me to respond better? I'm not saying that because we're Christian that we're better, because that isn't what it's about. But actually, I think sometimes we need to be honest about our failings as well, and be able to actually, ask for support from others around us as well.
Yep. Right. And in terms of helping people to understand how they can be praying for earlier years folk, whether it's someone they know in their church who's working with younger children under the age of 5, 6, perhaps they're actually in a nursery themselves, and how do I get people to help me? Can you sort of break down some of the particular pressures for early years into just maybe 3 points that we can actually easily then pray into?
So I would say, first of all, pray for the children themselves, so that they can really settle in quickly, learn the ropes, so to speak, and, feel really at home in their provision. Secondly, I'd say pray for the staff, that they can build relationships with the children, because I think, and relationships with their colleagues, but I think the relationship is the most important thing with the children. You get that right, and everything else will follow. And I think, thirdly, there are actually a few changes if you're working within England, particularly at the moment. So we have a statutory framework, and there are some changes being implemented from September. It's called the Early Years Foundation Stage, and we have just some updates that have happened. So I would like to pray that they'd be implemented smoothly, and that schools and settings, feel confident in delivering the best provision they can.
Excellent. Tamsin, thank you. I think it is so important that we can almost forget about the pressures on the children. We can forget about the pressures on the adults, and actually they're both under pressures. I mean, if you've moved to a new nursery, then you're trying to settle in thinking, what are the rules here? Because it's different from the last place, and the door that I used to go through now is not there. And there's normal stuff that we can associate. Yeah, we can get that. It's a new job.
Yes.
But it's the same for the children. If they moved up a year and it's a new class, well, now they're turning left, not right, all of a sudden, and there's going to be some natural confusion, and the staff too. So I think it's just really good to have some simple points that we can bring into our daily prayers. Tamsin, thank you for just sharing with us some of the stuff about early years, the pressures, particularly in the UK, which is what we're considering, and also just sharing some of the really simple, natural ways in which we can consider our own faith in the workplace. Tamsin, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Pure Media, the magazine, comes out on the first Friday every month. Our next edition comes out for September on the 5th of September and will be crammed full of amazing writers, features and columns. If that's not enough, we'll be delving deeper into the life and times of Jennifer Benson from US-based Ignescent. And if you love Lego, we'll be chatting with a man who gets to play with Lego every day. That'll be Josh from Go Chatter Studios. The digital version is always freely available online, and you can enjoy a printed subscription and get a copy in your hands too. Just head over to www.puremediathemagazine.com, where we're always on point and always in print.